Hello and welcome to Lyra Nara. If you have followed our work recently, you know that we've talked a lot about terrain versus germ theory. If you haven't watched our last videos, I highly recommend that you do so. If you haven't yet, don't worry, I'm gonna give you a short summary of the differences between the two theories in this presentation as well. But how can we apply the knowledge that we've gained? Well, we will explain exactly this point in this video. We're gonna show you how you can deal with any kind of disease, any type of situation with your health, prevent illness, and also get rid of the condition that you are suffering from. It's a complex undertaking, of course, and there's a lot to be said about it. In this video, we're gonna give you a short version of what terrain therapy involves. And if you want to know more in depth what it really is about, then I highly recommend that you become a patron. Link in the description box below to our Patreon channel. We will publish some more in-depth exclusive videos for our Patreons there. So please support our work by becoming a patron. You can also support our work by directly donating via the PayPal link in the description box below. It really helps us out a lot. Thank you for that. And without further ado, let's see how you can remain healthy and deal with any type of disease by applying terrain therapy. Unfortunately, we start to think about our health when we have already accumulated a whole load of chronic conditions, because chronic diseases build up over years and the treatment, of course, also becomes more complex the longer the terrain is disturbed, and you accumulate more and more burdens, and you develop therefore multiple chronic diseases. Also what is known as morbidity or chronic autonomic dysregulation. Some people also call them acidic diseases. And when you've built up all of these burdens, only a systemic autoregulative therapy can help in this case. And this is exactly what we're going to discuss in this presentation. How does this systemic therapy look like? But first, as promised, a short reminder on what we're talking about. So there are two competing theories out there of how diseases develop. One is the Louis Pasteur, also known as the germ theory, and the other one is the so-called terrain theory. This was developed by Patron. And Louis Pasteur postulated that the diseases happen in the following way. Your body is sterile according to the germ theory, and diseases arise from microorganisms that come from outside of the body, so you get invaded by pathogens such as bacteria, viruses, etc. And of course, therefore, microorganisms are to be guarded against because they are the culprits of disease. The function of the microorganisms is constant. This is known as monomorphism, so they don't change their shape according to the germ theory. And the shapes and colors of microorganisms are constant as well. Every disease is associated with a specific microorganism, and microorganisms are primary causal agents of diseases. And therefore, because you get infected by bacteria or virus, diseases can strike anybody regardless of your state of health according to this theory. And in order to prevent disease, we must build immunization with antagonistic vaccines, for example. Medical doctors nowadays are still working based on this old-fashioned germs and virus theory of diseases. But it is already becoming weaker and weaker because of new proofs to the contrary, and in our opinion is due for an overall. On the other hand, we have the so-called terrain theory or host theory, also known as milieu theory. Arthur Béchamp not only postulated, but he experimentally proved pleomorphism, identified microzymas, and he is regarded as the father of terrain therapy. So what does this terrain theory entail? After the death of an organism, its cells disappear, leaving myriad of microzymas, which literally mean little enzymes. And microzymas can live on indefinitely after the decay of the animal's body or the plants they built on, being the only non-transitory elements of the organism. Microzymas are the building blocks of plant and animal cells, which evolve into bacteria after the death of the plant or animal. And this is the pleomorphism part, so those germs are not static, they change their shape and they function according to the milieu. That's why it's also known as milieu theory. These airborne organisms, known also as atmospheric germs, are, according to Béchamp and terrain theory, microzymas, or the evolutionary forms of microzymas. They are bacteria set free by decompositions of the bodies in which they lived. And the microzymas found by Béchamp in the natural chalk, but not in artificial chalk, demonstrated to him that these microzymas are the perpetuators of life and not the prey of death. Microzymas show functional differences for the same organ at different ages, in different organs of the same species, but also in different individuals of the same species. And this explains the variety of diseases for different species, and also the fact that many diseases are not transmissible from one species to another. Often they are not even transmissible from one individual to another within the same species. And also this explains why diseases are age-specific. By injecting microbes into plants, Béchamp also figured out that the bacteria identified under the microscope were other species than those initially inoculated. Disturbing the plant cell's homeostasis induced the microzymas mutation into bacteria. And this is what is known as pleomorphism. As I've mentioned already, that those bacteria can mutate and they can change shape and function depending on the milieu. So now that we've gained a general understanding of what the milieu theory is, let's look deep into our organism and see what is exactly going on when the milieu is disturbed. In 1980, Professor Dr. Pischinger from the University of Vienna studied and experimentally demonstrated the following facts. He demonstrated that cells are not directly connected to blood vessels, capillaries, veins, lymphatic vessels, and nerves. Thus, the cells neither get their nutrients nor their oxygen directly, nor do they excrete their metabolites directly through the lymphatic vessels. The nervous system does also not transmit its signals directly through the cells. Everything necessary for cellular metabolism must be somehow transported to the cells through the connecting tissue that surrounds the cells. And this process is called basic regulation or autoregulation. Cellular osmosis and diffusion cannot transport enough quantities of glucose and oxygen, so the cells need help. The toxins and the metabolic waste drainage, as well as the cellular excretion, is not possible through the lymphatic system because there are no direct connections. And you can see this also here in the graphs on the right. In 1986, Pischinger discovered that in this soft connective tissue there are numerous highways of electrolytes that work like suspension monorails, transporting the nutrients and the oxygen to the cells and enabling thereby all cellular waste to reach the lymphatic system for excretion. You can see those electrolyte highways in the bottom right picture. Those are the dotted lines in red and black. One is for excretion, Y is for approvision with oxygen and the nutrients that the cells need. And the green crosses in the picture, by the way, are the toxins that accumulate around the cells in the matrix. This soft connective tissue that we're talking about is also known as fascia, matrix, milieu, or terrain. And diseases always start in the matrix when the electrolyte highways are blocked through the toxins that have accumulated in this connective tissue over the years. Especially acidic ways block the electrolytes transport in both directions from the cells and to the cells, and drainage and excretion are more important than the nutrition chain. Toxins must be eliminated through organs such as the skin, the lungs, the liver, the colon, the kidneys, the bladder, etc. The connective tissue also stores all toxins which cannot be eliminated in case of dysbiosis, dehydration, liver and kidney malfunction or spleen malfunction, etc. There is also parallel to traditional Chinese medicine here, because TCM considers these electrolyte highways running through the soft connective tissue as the energy meridians and the 8 extraordinary vessels. So in Chinese medicine, also in Ayurveda or Arabic medicine, diseases are never caused by invading pathogens, also known as germs. They are simply energy blockages. And this really correlates and is actually comes to the same result as what Professor Pischinger discovered, namely that there are these electrolyte highways in the connective tissue, and when they are blocked, what TCM calls an energy blockage, then everything stops functioning. So health represents the body's extraordinary capability to adapt very fast to the different stressors. An acute illness, fever, inflammation, these acute states may be even the expression of a good autoregulation capability. Chronic sickness is always a derailment of the cellular metabolism and the matrix functionality. And chronic diseases build over years, even decades, and therefore most of the multiple chronic conditions are characteristic for older people over 50. Illness and health are also the direct expression of the cellular metabolism and its interaction with the cellular milieu. And many stressors exist, psycho-emotional ones, the ones from the outside, exogenic ones, such as radiation, but also temperature, pressure, bacteria, etc. Nutrition has a very important regulative function, and we need to maintain a clean and balanced milieu inside of us, so we must get rid of the toxins and bring the necessary nutrients and oxygen to the cells. And for that, everything needs to be in balance and work properly. Let's see then how we can achieve that. And TCM might not be that incorrect when they say that it's all caused by energy blockages, because it has been proven that the matrix also has electric properties. So silica and the stored water in the matrix create a large liquid crystal with semiconductive properties. So there are electron barriers. It also contains insulating substances. And the electrons store light photons and sound phonons. Photons and phonons are carriers of life information. Crystals show a higher order degree and increase the cellular coherence. In this case, information can be better transmitted. And silica is in a fractal resonance with the Earth and the complete cosmos. You can see here in the picture on the left the basic structure of the matrix. where the silica is bound to the framework of the PG and GAGs and determines the geometry, and also where the crystalline water is stored between the PG and the GAGs, etc. The cell metabolism carriers are the electrons, and the acid-base carriers are the protons. Electrons and protons create a potential field, as can be also seen here in the picture on the right. When you have oxidative stress, there is a lack of electrons, and in an acidic stress there is also a surplus of protons and a lack of electrons. And therefore the matrix field is influenced by the stored substances and the matrix gel condition. So the cell is as good as its milieu. Cells and the milieu are also in permanent interaction, as we've seen, and the cells and the milieu react in unity because of the cellular communication, and they must deal with all inside as well as outside signals. Varela and Maturana, neurobiologists, said the following about that. Quote, "The phenomena which cells produce as autopoietic systems depend on the organization of the unity and on the way this is made come true." Herbert Fröhlich also stated that living systems are coherent states, and coherence enables the permanent providing of a dynamic order degree in the tissue with quick adaptability, and it can be even made visible through fractal pictures such as this one on the right. Those beautiful pictures are real and they represent a good cellular coherence. When you have this high coherence between the cells and their milieu, you create beautiful fractals as the one here on the right demonstrates. We are highly tense electrical systems, and all living beings' cells permanently and rhythmically get polarized and unpolarized, so they have a battery structure. And this matrix creates those beautiful fractal patterns, and the more colors you see in these fractal patterns, the more coherence there is, and the more coherence, of course, the healthier you are. Okay, now let's see how we can apply all of this knowledge to our health and how we can prevent illnesses and diseases, therefore, and also deal with the ones that we have already developed. Phase 1 is, of course, the prevention phase. We can consume sulfur-containing foods, for example. We can also take sulfur-containing supplements. Some good foods here that contain a lot of sulfur are broccoli, cress, horseradish, Brussels sprouts, and kohlrabi. When it comes to supplements, MSM comes to mind, for example. And then we have phase 2. We need to stimulate the cells and the matrix. We can achieve this again through specific supplements such as L-glutathione, curcuma, zeolite, magnesium, vitamin D3, and B3, also known as niacin. Phase 3 is the urine pH swing therapy. We take L-methionine and same to acidify, and we alternate this with potassium citrate to alkalize. Because it's never good only to stay in one phase. We need always to alternate between the states. It's the same with stress. If you stay only in the parasympathetic, it's not healthy. If you stay only in the sympathetic, this is not healthy either. We always need a balance and an alternation between the states. And the detoxification physiological process then happens in the liver when the connective tissue, the matrix, and the cells are working properly. They are communicating with each other. They are in coherence. They can detoxify as they need to, and they can also get all the necessary nutrients and oxygen. When it comes to a well-functioning organism, the detoxification part of the matrix is a little bit more important than the nutritional part, because once your matrix is blocked, your electrolyte highways do not work anymore and cannot extract the toxins from the cell and bring them to the respective organs such as the liver, the kidneys, etc. The whole system is blocked, and you can put as many good nutrients and supplements into your body as you want. They will not have a big effect. So how do we go about this matrix detoxification then? To boost the endogenous detoxification capacity, the cell metabolism must be corrected and regulated, and a prerequisite for the faultless function of the cell metabolism is a high membrane potential of 70 to 90 millivolts, which is generated by the sodium-potassium pump. Galvanic currents regulate this sodium-potassium pump. Another great regulator of the sodium-potassium pump is G-strophantine, and therefore you can prevent a heart attack with G-strophantine. To provide the cell metabolism with sufficient energy, the mitochondria and the cytoplasm must receive sufficient ionizing energy as well, and this can be furnished by red light at 630 nanometers and by pulsating magnetic fields, such as provided by devices as the MPS 912 or the 3D-HBT. We also need to trigger the detoxification function, and this can be achieved through certain substances. The most important one is glutathione. And to purge out the toxins, electrons must also be locally supplied to neutralize the acidic waste and relax the blood vessel constriction. And this function can be secured by correct breathing. You can use, for example, the Taker method or the Wim Hof method, or there are many others as well that work great, but you can achieve this also through the intake of DMSO and some other anti-inflammatory and detoxification herbs. To manage the detox processes in the connective tissue, the responsible brain areas also must be activated, because only the brain can give the necessary impulses for regeneration. You can achieve this by using devices such as the NSA7, the TMA717, and the IceFit 915. Also, to boost the regeneration in the detoxified tissue, deposits and cell fragments must be mechanically mobilized using piezoelectric detox or cupping or petechial massages. You can also use rebounders or infrared saunas to achieve this. To support also the new buildup of the tissue during the regeneration process after we have detoxified, a high cellular order degree must be induced, and this can be very well achieved through galvanic therapy or biorhythmic therapy. And to prevent unwanted resonances in the tissue, the toxic information must also be deleted, and this can be achieved through bioresonance or bioinformational therapy. And as I've mentioned already in the introduction, we're gonna bring out some videos that are exclusively available only to our patrons, where we go much more in depth into all of these subjects. So if you are not a Patreon yet, I highly recommend that you become one. Link in the description box below as mentioned. Let's sum it all up then and see what we've learned. We've learned that our human body is a very complex system with trillions of cells and an indefinable number of processes running at a cellular level. And therefore, health and illnesses are complex conditions, and a successful therapy must take this into consideration. The infinite large number of cells and cellular processes are, however, acting in coherence with each other. As we've seen, they work like a bird's flock. When one bird changes direction, all the other ones do the same. Exactly in the same coherent and integrative way, we must perform any type of therapy. Integration and not separation treatment on an informational, energetic, as well as physical level is necessary. Otherwise, we will never achieve our treatment targets. and they will not last. And this is also clearly demonstrated by the highly compartmentalized medicine of today with the rigid standard healthcare procedures, where they don't look at the situation holistically. You have experts for the lungs, experts for the heart, experts for your psyche, and they don't communicate with each other, and that's why they mostly manage symptoms and you rarely achieve complete health. The cells, as we've seen, permanently interact with the inner as well as the outside milieu, and the state of health is defined therefore by the body's capability to quickly adapt to stressors, whether they come from the inside or the outside. And this is known as autoregulation mechanism. Autoregulation supports a healthy cellular metabolism, and the prerequisites for this are a sufficient number of protons for the acidic-alkaline balance and a surplus of electrons flow for enough ATP energy production to run the whole factory. As we've seen, sickness always starts in the connective tissue that is also known as the matrix or the milieu. It is a complex network of semiconductive fibers responsible for transmitting signals and cell communication. Once stressors intrude this matrix, signals are blocked or distorted, cellular metabolism is hindered, membrane potential decreases, and thereby the body's ionizing energy, and the result is that you get sicker by the hour and you develop multiple chronic diseases. And interestingly enough, not the environmental pollutants are here the big culprits for making us ill. The exogenic toxins contribute by maximum 2% to the dysregulation of the cells. Our body's limited capacity to maintain health is determined by the detoxification functions of the organism, and they contribute over 98% to our health. So the endogenic toxins are way more important when you cannot detoxify properly anymore. This is what causes diseases for the most part. And to secure healthy cell metabolism, the cells need additional ionizing energy, which can be furnished by light, sound, heat, and electrons. With all that being said, I hope that you've enjoyed this presentation. If you did so, please like, share, and subscribe, and also hit the notification button for not missing out on the weekly content that appears here. If you want to go more in depth into terrain therapy, as I've mentioned, we're gonna provide some exclusive content on our Patreon channel. So please become a Patreon and support our work this way. Link in the description box below. You can also alternatively support us here directly via the PayPal link that is also provided in the description box below. Every little bit helps, and your support is very much appreciated. Thank you for that, and until next time, stay healthy.